What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with a preview for the Dean and Deluca Invitational. This tournament is being played at Colonial Country Club since forever, since inception. So if you're looking at course history, there's only one course to look at. Here is the DraftKings lobby for this week. If you are new to this video series, I'm just going to run through some players that I think are undervalued, some players that I like as maybe buy low candidates. We'll talk about the key stats that are most important to me this week, and then we'll probably wrap it up with some Vegas odds or something like that. So let's not waste any more time. Let's take a peek at my key stats for this week. Again, if you're new, I choose the stats that are most important to me on a weekly basis based on the course that they're going to be playing. I take all those ranks for each player, I roll it up in a ball, and I spit out a score for each one. So basically a player who scores 100 is perfect. We haven't had that yet. And 50 is the average. So that's what you're looking at here. You'll probably notice that, this is another par 70 in Texas. So a lot of our key stats might be similar from last week. And let's talk about why I chose the stats that I did. So we're going to use good drive percentage again. And I actually got corrected by a viewer on this, so I'm actually going to read to you what the definition of a good drive is. So it's the percent of a time a player hits a good drive. It's calculated only on par 4s and par 5s, and it's the number of fairways hit plus the number of greens in regulation or fringes in regulation when the drive was not in the fairway. So basically, are you hitting fairways? If you aren't, are you hitting your second shot on the green or on the fringe? So basically, you're looking at 87% is or 88% is the best in the field this week. These are really dog-legged fairways. So we've got a lot of dog legs. We have a lot of tree-lined fairways. So it's not necessary for you to just be an absolute bomber. So because of that, I think you're going to have to place your drives not only in the fairway, but in the proper spot of the fairway. And these greens, which we'll talk about in a second, are the smallest on tour. So you really need to position yourself in the ideal position for your approach shot. So keep that in mind, but that's why I went with good drive percentage for this week. Next up, we did strokes gained approach. Again, smallest greens on tour. I was thinking we would do proximity to see who was throwing darts, but I don't particularly love that stat. I thought strokes gained approach was a little bit more encompassing. Also, since they are the smallest greens on tour, there's going to be a lot of people missing them. So if you miss them, you need to be able to get up and down. So I chose scrambling. I picked par 4 scoring. Again, it's a par 70, so we're going to have 12 par 4s on this course, so you better be able to take them apart. And then since it is DraftKings scoring, of course, I'm going to do birdie or better percentage over there on the right. I actually did make a FanDuel tab for this week. I got another viewer who asked, can you talk about some FanDuel stuff? And there's no FanDuel contest this week. Apparently, they're making some big upgrades. So, sorry guys, we'll talk about FanDuel another week. All right, let's go through a couple of these players here, and you have to start with the top. Jordan Spieth, what are we going to do with you? 3 missed cuts in his last 4 events, but the key stats are really unbelievable. So here's Jordan. He's my 5th ranked golfer, 12th in good drive percentage, 1st in strokes gained approach, 4th in par 4 scoring, 1st in birdie or better. But those 3 missed cuts are really looming pretty large over Jordan Spieth. And I wonder, I'm recording this on Monday, so I don't have my finger on the pulse of the industry for this week yet. I just wonder what his ownership's going to be. There's a lot of really good options below him. So Spieth is a guy who's the most expensive player on tour. He's missed 3 of the last 4 cuts. Can we really proceed and invest in him? I think we can. I think we can buy low. Let's look at his performance here. Doesn't get any better than this. He's your defending champion, T2, T14, T7 in the other 3 appearances here. It's just a really good opportunity. He gamed a new putter last week and putted pretty poorly. I heard there was some speculation he might switch back to his normal putter, that Scotty Cameron that he used to win all those tourneys. But if he switches back, great. If he doesn't, I think we can argue, okay, this is the second tournament with the new putter. Maybe he's a little bit more comfortable. He missed the cut last week. Maybe he's had a couple extra days to practice with it. I don't know. I trust this guy to continue to grind and figure this out pretty quickly. By the way, quick plug here. So this sheet that you're looking at, this is available on DFS on demand. It's got a bunch of cool tabs. I've got history and what the holes played last year and how players are doing last week and recently. A lot of cool stuff on here. All right, let's continue to roll. Jon Rahm. So Rahm has been unbelievable this season. He checks in as my #1 golfer. Very uncharacteristic 82 on Saturday for him to MDF last time he teed it up at the Players, but just having a really nice year. I don't think we have any concerns. The only thing I might be concerned about is this is a really good stat from my friend Josh Culp. He noted that out of the last 11 winners of this tournament, 10 of them have placed in the top 15 at least once previously. So the implication is that course history is going to play a large part this week. That would hurt Jon Rahm. This is the first time he's ever played here, but Rahm has routinely destroyed courses this year that he's never played before or never played on tour. So maybe this applies to other guys who are making their debut, but I think we can be pretty liberal with Jon Rahm in our lineups this week. Quickly, I'll move on. Sergio. To me, he's just a little inconsistent. He wins at the Masters, but I haven't been thoroughly impressed with his game recently, or after that, I should say. If you look at his last 8 rounds, he's had basically 3 really, really low rounds, 65, 64, 67. Those have kept him in play at the last 2 tournaments. But other than that, pretty uninspiring. Kind of falls apart at the Players, kind of falls apart at the Byron Nelson. Doesn't do anything spectacular. I mean, I like his game, but it's outside of those 3 really, really low rounds, he hasn't done much. So maybe you're looking at, I was going to say if it was a FanDuel week, you can try to get 2 rounds out of him, or on DraftKings, maybe a weekend play. Just not sure I really want to invest in him for all 4 rounds. And then Paul Casey is interesting. So Paul Casey, let's see if we can find him on my performance sheet. Okay. So limited success here. Hasn't played a ton recently. In the last, 6 years, he's played it twice. He was cut once and had a tie for 43rd. Well, that's not very good. If you're willing to go back a little further, though, it gets a lot better. T13 and a 5th place in 2010 and 2009. So it gets a lot better there. But the key stats would indicate that this is just a really good fit for him. He's one of these guys who can hit very accurate drives off the tee. He is unbelievably hot approaching the green in the last 4 or 5 weeks, last month or so. Really playing well. And then here's another guy that I'm not sure what his ownership is going to be. So I think around the DFS community, most people are aware of Casey probably being a good play this week. But he didn't even make the PGAtour.com Rob Bolton's top 15 power rankings, which I don't peruse a lot of other sites, but I do read Rob Bolton's because it's from the PGA Tour, and I think he really can influence a lot of people. He can influence the general public. So I think a lot of his readers, they might not be the sharpest players, but I do think they're a large percentage of players, or at least of the casual fans. So Casey might be a really highly owned play in DFS communities, but the general public who just read PGAtour.com and go in and put lineups in around people that they know their name, I'm not sure Casey makes that cut. So really interesting to see what his ownership is going to come in with. And he's kind of off the charts on my model here. So have to love that. Going down a little further, I think there's some good plays here. Duffner being one of them. If you look at Duffner, what's this? In his last 8 events, he's got 5 top 15s. Basically, playing really well, coming off a T13 last week at the Byron Nelson. And then if we pull up his performance, here's Duff. basically alternating years. T6, second place. In between those, it's T43, T46. So really good 5-year run for Duffner here, and he's playing really well. So hard to overlook. And then I have another note on Duffner in a second. We'll talk about that. Talk about that at the end. Continuing, another guy that we're going to talk about at the end is Pat Perez. So Perez at only 7,600 seems like a steal to me. Again, really solid performance coming in. T22 at the Players, T2 at the Wells Fargo. Has he missed a cut this year? Oh, the Waste Management, but he withdrew with the shoulder, right? So outside of that, like the dude's been awesome. And then I think he actually ranks pretty well. Yeah, here's my key stats. Awesome birdie or better, 7th. Does really well on the par 4s, which is going to be important this week. Really good scrambler, going to be important this week. So Pat Perez, again, hard to overlook, and I do have another little tidbit on him in just a second. If we go back to my key stats here, so Kyle Stanley, wow, really good driver of the golf ball, 2nd in good drive percentage. Under par on par 4 scoring, 7th in that category. And he's playing well as well. Here you go. T4 last time he teed it up at the Players. T8 at the Shell Houston. T17 at the Arnold Palmer. I mean, the Arnold Palmer and the Players, like, those are no joke fields. Like, those are legit fields. And Stanley's, putting up some excellent results. What you'll notice here is this little bit worrisome, where 75 in the final round of the Players, 75 in the final round of the Arnold Palmer. So again, if it was a FanDuel week, I'd say fire up Kyle Stanley in first and second round, but we're not going to get that. But you kind of get the idea. These are the types of things that we're looking at when we're making our lineup decisions. And then finally, I think there's just one more guy I want to point out here. There's actually a lot of good plays this week. I'll still be on Tway. Vegas is a guy who always makes a lot of lineups. McGirt had some pretty good key stats this week. But I think that... Here we go. Stuart Sink is really interesting. And we talked about him a couple weeks ago because he's having a type of a resurgence year where things seem to be going really well for Sink. I think he's playing a lot more, and he's racking up a lot of top 25s. So he's been cut in 2 of the last 3, but if you look other than that, 22nd, 23rd, 28th, 27th, 27th, 28th. I mean, pretty consistent finisher there. And then his performance is kind of interesting. So if you look at this, the last 5 years he's played twice, cut in both. So that kind of hurts his average finish. But if you throw those out, I mean, the guy's played here a ton, and he's got some decent numbers. So T16, T22, 22, 18, 4th. That's a hell of a, 5 or 6 year stretch. If you want to go back even further, which, again, course history this far back, I don't know what to do with it, but it's worth noting. He has a 2nd place here, another, 13th and 14th here. Like, he's gone deep in this event over and over and over again in his career. Not so much recently, but this is also the best he's played in his career recently. Again, kind of that resurgence factor, and for 6,700, tough to overlook. I think he also has some pretty good key stats. Yeah, here we go. So only $6,700. Again, another guy who plays really well on the par 4s and really good on those approach shots, those second shots. So if you're down in this range, you can probably do a lot worse than Stuart Sink. All right, and then what I always like to do here is end with the Vegas odds. So if you're new, the DraftKings or fantasy site salaries, they usually directly correlate with the Vegas odds, but there's always some guys that we can pick out as under or overvalued. So a couple of these guys that I wanted to talk about. Duffner at 9,000, same price, or I'm sorry, same odds of winning, 25-1 as Paul Casey, Matt Kuchar, and Bud Cauley. And he is by far the cheapest of those players. Paul Casey's $1,200 more expensive. Adam Hadwin, I don't think I mentioned Hadwin. I like him this week a lot. Really consistent player. I think he was pretty good in the key stats for me as well, and underpriced. Here's a guy who might be overpriced, Zach Johnson. 35 to 1, but 9,800 bucks. It's obviously his stellar course history is driving his DraftKings salary up. So be aware of that. I'm sure I'll have some exposure to him, but he's priced probably too high. Here's Pat Perez, 40 to 1, the same odds as Webb Simpson, and $1,500 less expensive. So he should probably be, Pat Perez could be, you could argue should be like $9,000, and he's 7,600. So those are the big ones. McGirt and Kyle Stanley, again, they are probably a little bit underpriced, which makes sense. They hop up in our key stats too. So I think our model is doing pretty well. And that's probably it. Tringali coming off the pretty good finish last week, might be underpriced just a little bit. So he might be a guy you might want to sprinkle in. And then Stuart Sink might be $300 less than he should be. That's it. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment below or shoot me a tweet. It's at DFS On Demand. Best of luck this week, and I'll talk to you guys soon. See ya.